And it's that negative response we have to much of life, and a lot of times we can't really do anything. The complaining is a waste of time. And we think, oh no, it just lets off steam. It doesn't let off steam, it just makes your mind more and more negative. And I notice as a Western community especially, and I think this is infecting Asian countries as well, we're just such great complainers, and we don't need to do that. One of the stories which shows why we shouldn't complain is that story of, they're not here this evening, the two Thai sisters who came to my monastery. And again, these little stories, they expand into some very profound understandings of the nature of our lives. Because these two Thai sisters, I tell the story often, I hope I haven't told it here recently, but I give so many talks. You know, I don't know actually what I taught last week, because in the meantime I give about 3 or 4 talks elsewhere. So I don't know what I taught here, what I taught at the council group, what I taught somewhere else, so please excuse me. But anyway, it's a great story. These two sisters came to our monastery for counselling. And when I talked to the first, the elder sister, what's your problem? Her problem was her husband. Surprise, surprise. And she was having such a difficult time living with this man. And to take all the problems, and as a Buddhist, we really try hard to keep the relationships together. And if at all costs, not at all costs, we really put a lot of effort to try and solve the problems in a marriage. So I'll tell you all the different ways of looking at a problem and trying to deal with it, a bit of like positive feedback to your husband and positive feedback towards yourself, and all sorts of ways we can deal with the problem. But basically, her problem was, she had a husband she didn't want, that she was stuck with. And then sort of, I'd given as much as I could to her, so then I talked to her sister, what's your problem? And her problem was that she was single. And she was quite attractive, but found it easy to find boyfriends. But she said every time, maybe a month at most, we go out together and it all falls apart. I just can't keep a man. And he said, I'm getting a bit old now, I'm in my early 30s, I'm not quite sure whether I can actually find a partner in life. I don't want to grow old without anybody, I don't want to be lonely, but my problem is just, I can't find a husband. And of course, though you heard the story before, know that I thought of a solution. A very obvious one. Your older sister had a husband she didn't want, and you want one. Your sisters, swap. And for this day, I'm so surprised they didn't agree on that wonderful wise solution. But having said that, it made them both laugh. Then, of course, you get into the important part of that story. And the important part, and it's a very wonderful way of looking at life, is that when you're married, I told the woman with her husband, you have what we call in Buddhism, husband dukkha. Dukkha means suffering. You have that particular type of suffering in life we call husband suffering. And for those of you who have had 2 or 3 in your life so far, you've been remarried, it's pretty much the same. And there's a slight differentiation in the models, but they've all got the same engine underneath, like these cars, there might be sort of a different colour on the outside, but it's the same engine. And this is what we call husband suffering. And I told this lady, look, this is, your symptom, you've got husband suffering, this is what it's like to have a husband. Now, I've never had a husband, but I've counseled so many people, it's quite clear as an objective bystander, which is one of my kids, that you've got that particular type of suffering, I've heard it many times before, called husband suffering. And I looked at her sister and said, you haven't got that suffering, you've got what we call single woman suffering. And that's what it's like when you're single, you have that other type of suffering. And I said, look, if you get rid of your husband, you won't have husband suffering anymore. You'll have what your sister's got, single woman suffering. And you sister, if you find a guy and get married, you won't have that suffering you've got now. You'll have married. You have the same suffering your sister's got. So just by getting a guy or getting rid of the guy doesn't mean you get rid of suffering. You just get a different flavour of ice cream. That's all.